Hello and welcome to The Arise interview, 60 glorious minutes of multifaceted discussion where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things, and we feature the voices at the heart of the stories. I'm Charles Aniagolu. Coming up in the next hour, it's become a highly contentious issue in Nigeria, the arrest of the former presidential candidate and organizer of the Revolution Now protests, Omoyele Sowore, for as some see it, daring to mobilize the public against the ruling government. Well, now the situation has gone up a notch, with a court in Abuja granting the Department of State Security leave to detain Mr. Sowore for a period of 45 days. We'll hear from one of Nigeria's most respected senior lawyers and human rights activist, Femi Falana, who has devoted his professional life to upholding and defending the rule of law. And later, we'll also hear from Mr. Falana about the other case that he's been closely involved with, the incarceration for years of the Shia leader Sheikh Ibrahim El-Zakzaky, despite a court order freeing him on bail, and the controversial decision to ban his pro-Iranian Shia group, the Islamic Movement in Nigeria, accusing it of unleashing violence and being an enemy of the state. The indefatigable Femi Falana in a moment. Now, the debate over the clash between the rule of law, the constitutional right to protest, and national security has been reignited by the bitterly pungent clashes between pro-democracy demonstrators and security forces in Nigeria over their right to protest against the government. The demonstrations had been organized by the pro-democracy and opposition campaigner Omoyele Sowore, who leads a movement he calls Revolution Now, a hashtag that's become the top Twitter trend in Nigeria and has been all week. Mr. Sowore was arrested over the weekend and accused of calling for the government's overthrow. And now those who have him in custody, Nigeria's secret police, the DSS, have been authorized by a court to detain him for a further 45 days. His supporters who attempted to demonstrate have been tear-gassed and many arrested. Well, now the screeching level of protests and criticisms that have trailed what many see as the government's heavy-handedness have gone up a notch, with one of Nigeria's most respected senior lawyers and human rights activist, Femi Falana, throwing his considerable leverage into the fray. Well, in a moment, we'll speak to Mr. Falana himself. But first, here he is, coming out in support of Mr. Sowore's cause.
The man who is accused of causing a revolution is in detention. And many Nigerians have asked me, but Femi, that young man went too far. How can you be calling for a revolution? I said, where is the offense? You know, since terrorism, under what section? Treason, under what section of the criminal code? I do hope that the government will not charge him. The government will not be stupid to charge Sowore. You know why? He has briefed me. And, no, I'm telling you, in fairness to the SSA, when he told them yesterday, I won't make a statement unless I've spoken to my lawyer. And they say, who is your lawyer? Say, Femi Falana. In fairness to them, they asked him to phone me, and they gave him a phone. Of course, I knew they were monitoring the phone. And I told him, I hope they won't charge you. But if they do, some of the people in government will be our witnesses. You know why? No, you know why? One of them, I won't mention his name, in 2011, asked Nigerians to learn from the Egyptian revolution and be ready for a revolution in Nigeria.
I'm delighted to say that Mr. Femi Falana, human rights campaigner for many years and senior advocate of Nigeria, joins me now in the studio. Delighted to have you, sir.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
For coming in. And just listening to that clip there, I wonder who it was you were referring to about the person who spoke in 2011.
Well, as I did say, I won't go beyond that for now because I'm preparing my defense in case the case goes to court. Yes. And just to let the state know what I intend to do if this matter eventually ends up in a criminal court. But from the circumstances and the facts of this case, for me, I think it's going to be very difficult to establish a criminal case. More so that Mr. Sowore was arrested before the protest. So if he was going to cause a revolution on Monday, the 6th of August, you had already arrested him on Friday and kept him in detention.
But of course,
so you have already aborted the so-called revolution.
Yeah, but is it so much the act of carrying out a revolution or the intention to carry out a revolution?
The intention here doesn't constitute an offense. It doesn't. The mere declaration doesn't constitute a crime. I mean, it's like somebody says, I'm a murderer. To pin him down, you need to show evidence that he has killed one or two people. Anybody can just say, oh, the law may just say maybe the man has just woken up from his bed. Maybe he was dreaming, you know. So in this particular case, a man says, I'm going to have a protest in a stadium, in a confined place. That is not how a revolution is waged. You know, if he has said, I'm going to have a protest, mobilize people, and then we are going to topple the government, then you may talk about treasonable felony. And the only case that has been successfully prosecuted, a couple of them, but the most notorious one is the one of the late chief of Omoyele. There were witnesses, gave evidence to the effect that even though treason had not been committed, but they were training people in Ghana. Nobody has said that in the case of Sowore. Even on the day of the protest, nobody was armed. So is that how to wage a revolution?
Do you think...
And like the late chairman Mao said, a revolution is not a dinner party, but a total overthrow of a particular social order. I've read all the statements. I've even listened to the tapes. I haven't really seen anything beyond perhaps harassing the government.
So, based on what you've just said and based on your considerable knowledge of the law, why do you think the DSS and people like that, the Nigerian government, I mean, they have an attorney general, they have lawyers at their disposal, don't they consult them before they take this sort of action?
Unfortunately, I mean, of course, there is no sitting attorney general now, but one thing I've found extremely disturbing on the part of successive governments in Nigeria since 1999 is the failure, first of all, to appreciate that we have trodden this path before. And our courts have made definitive pronouncement recognizing the rights of Nigerians. The second one is, I really doubt if our governments are exposed to sound legal advice. Otherwise, some of these alleged criminal offenses are at best irritations that a government that is matured will simply ignore.
Absolutely.
But when you now try to say, oh, they were going to remove the government. I mean, a government that has just been re-elected, is that government so unpopular that a mere protest will now remove it? I don't understand it. And that's why I get worried and I try to engage people in government. Are you really serious, these guys? You know?
But do you think it is the government and specifically the presidency that orders the DSS to take this sort of action, or does the DSS do it on its own?
You see, it's going to be difficult to draw a line of dichotomy between the presidency and the state security service. More so, that you had statements from the presidency. I mean, for instance, one of the presidential spokespersons, in fact, the two of them have spoken on behalf of the president, saying that an offense of a monumental level was going to be committed. And when the protest was disrupted by the police, the presidency came out to congratulate Nigerians for not being part of the revolution. So where is the offense? I wonder. But I take the government, I try to study the statements that are oozing out of the presidency or the security service and the police to the effect that, these guys had violated, had contravened the provisions of the criminal code with respect to treason or treasonable felony. They have also violated the law on terrorism, which is why this order was made today. But when you look at the provisions, the relevant provisions of those laws, and I've challenged the government, I haven't seen any offense committed. Section 37 of the Criminal Code Act provides that treason is committed when a person levies war on the country. And levying a war must go beyond a threat, must go beyond a protest. Terrorism, simply defined, and that is the way it is defined under our law, is achieving a political objective through violence. I haven't seen anybody who has accused Sowore or any of the protesters of violence. So you do not go to a rally, you can't charge a placard carrying person for treasonable felony or for terrorism. I do recall an incident. I think this was 1992. About 5 of us were detained in custody in Kuje prisons. After about a couple of months, we arraigned before a chief magistrate court.
That was under the government of Babangida, right?
And were charged with treasonable felony.
Military government.
It was a joke. I mean, the late Chief Femi SAN and I had to defend ourselves and our colleagues. And we're laughing in the dark. What is this? What have we done? We went beyond Sowore. We had posted thousands of posters, printed them, and pasted them all over the country, asking for an immediate end to military dictatorship in our country, i.e., the Babangida must go. He hadn't even announced election yet, but we just thought the transition program was unending, and we're wasting so much public fund, and we are taxpayers.
But of course, that was an unconstitutional government.
Yes, even a military regime.
Yeah, which is different from what you've got today.
No, and we got the case thrown out. Because by the time we made our submissions, questioning even the morality of a military dictator charging us with treasonable felony, when in fact it should be standing trial for treason. In this case, yes, people have said that the election has just taken place.
They thought we'd better put a lid on this before it goes somewhere else.
Election has just taken place. Why are you doing this?
Right.
Again, in 2003, an election held in April that year. In September, General Muhammadu Buhari, the late Chuba Okadibu, and other AMPP leaders had a protest in Kano. And some of those who spoke there said, we are beginning a revolution today. And we're going to go around the country. The police violently disrupted the rally, just like this one. In the process, Dr. Chuba Okadibu inhaled some, alleged poisonous gas, tear gas. A couple of days later, it passed on. The AMPP leaders came to me. As I'm being brief now, please, can you challenge the legality of police permit? Why must we, as free citizens under a democratic government, ask for permit to exercise our freedom of expression? And I went to court, federal court here. We got the court delivered judgment in their favor to the fact that no Nigerian should ask for police permit to demonstrate either for or against the government. The police went to the Court of Appeal. The Court of Appeal unanimously upheld the judgment of the lower court and went further to say that demonstrations for or against the government of Nigeria is an extension, part of your freedom of expression.
I'm going to have to ask you to just hold that thought. We're going to continue in a moment. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our chat with the lawyer and human rights campaigner Femi Falana on the latest issue to raise his hackles, the arrest and detention of the convener of the Revolution Now movement, Omoyele Sowore. Stay with us. The Arise interview, where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things around the world and featuring the voices at the heart of the stories. I'm Charles Anyegolu. Now, the hashtag Revolution Now is the top Twitter trend in Nigeria. It has been all week following protests in Abuja and Lagos by pro-democracy activists. Many of those protesters were tear-gassed and arrested. as they were trying to demonstrate on the streets of two of Nigeria's main cities against what they see as the government's failure to move the country in the right direction. The demonstrations had been organized by the pro-democracy and opposition campaigner and former presidential candidate Omoyele Sowore. He was arrested over the weekend and accused of calling for the overthrow of the government of President Buhari. Well, one man who begs to differ is Nigeria's foremost human rights activist and respected senior lawyer, Femi Falana, who Mr. Sowore has asked to represent him. We'll speak some more to Mr. Falana in a moment, but first, let's take a listen to the government side setting out its case against Mr. Sowore.
There will not be any forceful takeover of government, and the DSS will not idle by, stand by, and watch people, self-serving people, take laws into their hands. We will do all that is within the law to discharge our responsibility and ensure that there is peace in Nigeria beyond tomorrow. In a democracy, one of the highlights of democratic governance is periodic elections. If any person who had contested an election didn't succeed, all you need to do is to go back, rework your system and strategies, and indeed wait for another election. You cannot, in the middle of, shortly after an election, begin election in which one had participated. But I would not want to make comments about political issues. I want to limit the DSS to issues that concern public safety, to issues that concern our statutory mandate, to issues that has the Constitution that has enabled us to ensure and protect the internal security of Nigeria. Whether we will do that, it is not in doubt that we will do it. We will do it today, we will do it tomorrow, we will do it ever, as far as the entity Nigeria remains.
And that's a spokesman for the Department of State Security here in Nigeria. And the respected senior lawyer and human rights campaigner Femi Falana is with me in the studio. Thank you for staying with us. And when we were on break, you and I had talked briefly about the letter of the law in Nigeria. Just to be clear, what is the law as far as public protests are concerned? Do people have to get permits from the police, or has it got to be approved by the police before it takes place?
Yeah, I was just telling you a couple of minutes ago how we won the battle for public protests in Nigeria. And for this, I must commend the AMPP leaders, former AMPP leaders, including the president.
That's a political party that used to
fought
be. Right.
That battle to a logical conclusion, and we won the battle. Secondly, in Abuja here, when the Jonathan administration disbanded the members of the Bring Back Our Guest campaigners led by Dr. Obi Ezekwesili, we went to court. Incidentally, the current MD, managing director of the NPA, Nigerian Post Authority, Adiza Bala Usman, was the first plaintiff in that case. We also won the battle. Based on these two fundamental decisions, the National Assembly in March 2015 amended the law to the effect that, notwithstanding the provisions of the Public Order Act and the Police Act, whenever there is a protest by Nigerians, the police shall provide security. In other words, protesters shall now be protected by the police. That is the law. If, as is being alleged, any group decides to demonstrate, the law has not determined when you can demonstrate. Even on the day of election, you can demonstrate. After the election, you can demonstrate. And that was what happened in 2003 by the MPP leaders. In fact, beyond, Sowore didn't go to court this time. General Muhammadu Buhari had already filed an election petition in court. Notwithstanding the pendency of the election petition at the Court of Appeal, he decided to mobilize his members, his supporters, for a protest. In fact, they were going to have protests around the country. But the protest, was disbanded in Kano. People were injured. We then went to court. So they won that battle for us.
In other words, there's precedent.
Of course. So you cannot now, and even when the current chairman of the APC, Comrade Adams Oshiomhole, was president of the Nigerian Labour Congress, The Olusegun Obasanjo administration tried many times to prevent them from embarking on strike and street protest. Again, we had to go to court. But we had gone beyond this level. And this is my pain. Under the Olusegun Obasanjo regime, the government will have to approach the court. We have information that the following Nigerians are planning to
destroy. So there needs to be a court order.
Can you get an order for us?
Yeah, so there needs to be a court order stopping
But
that.
you cannot now just sit down in the office of the IG or Director General of State Security or as a pressman, I mean the publicity secretary, to go and tell the whole world an offense has been committed. You have no powers to do that. You must go to court and get an order to violate or to abridge any of the rights entrenched in Chapter 4 of the Constitution.
But what about the responsibilities of the protesters? Do they have to go to the police and say, we're going to do this and we require permission to
No.
Because, I mean, I've heard many times the police saying this is not approved.
No, they are not. We're trying to get the police to appreciate the current state of the law.
Right.
Permit for protest has been declared null and void, illegal and unconstitutional since July 2005. And that is the state of the law. We have now gone beyond that to say the police shall protect those who want to demonstrate against the government or for the government.
But can the police make the argument that if you're planning to marshal a lot of people who will, in other words, is there a collateral angle to that law, a matter of interpretation, that if you're going to marshal, thousands of people out on the streets, potentially disrupting not only traffic but people's lives and so on and so forth, and potentially endangering people, if there are going to be people who are protesting against what you're doing, that you would need to have the police grant you sort of permission, and the police assess its capacity to maintain law and order in those circumstances.
What the police will be required to do in this circumstance is to meet the organizers of the protest. Please, can you march here or there? But you cannot stop them. I mean, I remember an incident in Accra. I was there in 2007. The country was marking its, I think, 50th anniversary of its independence. And Ghana became independent in 1957. And there was going to be a protest by a group which believed that Ghana was not yet independent. It was only independent, flag independent. We have no cause to celebrate. The Inspector General of Police had to approach the court. These people are trying to march around the stadium where we're expecting foreign guests. The court said, yes, we cannot stop them from protesting, but we will not allow them to protest around the stadium. Thou shalt protest in another part of the city. And that was what happened on that occasion. We have also got to that level too, where we had that incident in this country. When the federal government approached the court, the Nigerian Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress were planning a protest. Please, can you stop them? And of course, the court granted the order. We had to persuade the labor leaders. When they said, no, regardless of this order, because it was obtained behind us, we are going to march. Say, no, you will observe the order. Allow us, as the late Shifa Emir and my humble self, to go to court and set it aside before you can march. And we did that on that occasion because the court was presented with a one-sided version.
So let me ask you this. What do you think then is the justification, the legal justification for a court in Abuja deciding to grant the Department of State Security leave to detain Mr. Sowore for a further 45 days, if there is no legal justification for him being detained under the supposed guise of trying to carry out a revolution?
I think the court, as it did say, had only one side of the argument. It was an ex parte application. And I'm sure by the time Sowore's side is presented, the court will have to review the order vis-a-vis Section 35 of the Constitution, which prescribes that every Nigerian reasonably suspected to have committed an offense shall be brought before a court of law. Within 24 hours, in a place like Lagos or Abuja, where you have courts within a radius of 40 kilometers. If it's beyond that, not more than 48 hours. Up till now, Sowore has not been charged with any offense,
right,
as understood by the Constitution.
Right.
Therefore, the court will have to weigh which one is higher in the hierarchy of superiority of laws, the Constitution or the Terrorism Act.
Right. So are you planning to challenge his continued detention within the 45-day
I already
period?
have instructions of Mr. Sowore, because I
Right.
met him yesterday. He already envisaging that he might be detained through the court. So he has given us instructions.
And you met him. What is his condition? I mean,
he's in very high spirits.
Right.
It's very okay.
he must have felt considerably more confident having spoken to you.
Yes, as a matter of fact, and I must commend the State Security Service here. Even before I met him yesterday, he had been allowed to speak to me on phone, which is in line with the provisions of the Constitution as well as the Administration of Criminal Justice Act, that before a suspect makes a statement in a police station, he or she is entitled to demand to consult his or her lawyer. And if he has no means of getting a lawyer, the state shall engage the services of a lawyer for him or her. That's where we are, and that's why I want Nigerians and the government in particular to appreciate where we are as far as the human rights regime in Nigeria is concerned. We've left this stage of somebody going to tell the media somebody has committed an offense. In fact, it's now an offense to parade suspects in our country.
But
You can't engage the media trial.
Yeah.
You must take the person to court. And when you haven't done it, you now go to court. Please authorize us to detain him. What of the period he has been kept in detention without trial?
Okay, let's take a break. Please stay with us. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our chat with the senior lawyer and human rights activist Femi Falana. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview, where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things around the world and featuring the voices at the heart of the stories. I'm Charles Anyegolu. Now to the trials and tribulations of the pro-Iranian Shia group, the Islamic Movement in Nigeria, and its leader, Sheikh Ibrahim El-Zakzaky. After weeks of turmoil, with its supporters taking to the streets and leading to some even losing their lives, Sheikh Ibrahim El-Zakzaky has been granted permission to seek medical treatment abroad. Sheikh Zakzaky and his wife have been held in custody since 2015, and his health has deteriorated rapidly recently, according to his son. Well, the Nigerian authorities until now refused to allow him to travel, and last week his movement, the IMN, was proscribed by the government as a terrorist organization and barred from holding public demonstrations. But recently, amid watertight security with all roads blocked by stern-looking armed police, a court in Kaduna granted Sheikh El-Zakzaky some reprieve. Well, the lawyer who represents Sheikh El-Zakzaky is the senior advocate of Nigeria, Femi Falana, who is also one of this country's most respected human rights activists. And Mr. Falana is with me in the studio. Thank you very much indeed for staying with us. So what exactly does this court order reprieving Sheikh El-Zakzaky mean? Where can he and his wife go to? I understand they're heading to India.
Well, in the first place, I can tell you, for me, that was not one of the applications I would ordinarily make as a Nigerian. That I have to go to court to ask that citizens of Nigeria be flown abroad for treatment. But because of the collapse of our health facilities, we had to do that. As far as the law is concerned, when a Nigerian or anybody is detained by the government, the duty is on the government to ensure that the person remains alive. If he stands in trial, he must be alive to stand trial. Hence, the courts have repeatedly maintained that where the facilities in the prison are not sufficient, adequate, to cater for the medical needs of a detainee. In fact, as far back as 1917, the colonial regime had recognized that there may be situations where a prison inmate may suffer from a contagious disease, a dangerous disease, and his life may be endangered the family can simply request, can we have the inmate taken out for treatment and brought back after the completion of the treatment? That was not what we did in this case. We asked for the court. We asked the court, first of all, since the government is doubting whether these two detainees are sick, seriously sick, allow a team of doctors drawn from the side of the government and the side of the detainee to examine them. And that was done. Pursuant to a court order, the reports were filed before the court, and the reports actually painted a terrible picture. Right. One, El-Zakzaky had lost an eye in detention and is in the process of losing the other one, because the other one now, is suffering from glaucoma in the other eye. Two, both of them who were shot at on the 14th of December 2014 have now had some of the pellets or metals removed from their bodies, and this is causing excruciating pains. 3 weeks ago, El-Zakzaky suffered partial stroke in detention, and so the court looked at all the medical reports, 8 of them, none filed by the Kaduna State government, yet opposing the application. And the court was left with no other choice.
Right, and it's taken them 4 years to get to this
4
point.
years. Suffering excruciating pain. It's even inhuman and no longer allowed by our law.
And do you know if they've left for India yet?
Not yet, but certainly they will have to leave.
Right.
Because it would be dangerous not to allow them to leave.
But in the meantime, he's still in detention.
They're still in detention.
Right. There are, of course, conditions attached to his reprieve, apart from
only one legal condition.
Right. And
by the court.
Right. Apparently, they will be accompanied by security officials.
Oh, yes.
Right.
And that is how it is done. If somebody is in custody, stand trial, and you want him to be alive to remain, to remain alive to stand trial, you won't just allow him to go.
Right. So let's just be clear that, in other words, this is not a bail, but more like a medical trip leave.
Oh, for sure.
Where they've been given permission to attend to their health, but have not been granted bail.
No, it's not about bail. That one has been dealt with. Again, you must know that on the 2nd of December 2016, we got a court order for their absolute release. I.e., at that time, nobody said they had committed any offense. All the government said at that time, we needed to give them protection, protective custody. And you don't have such a provision under our law that you detain an adult against his wish and desire for protective custody. He's not suffering from any dangerous disease like Ebola that you want to quarantine him. The court said, no, that's not our law. They mentioned security. The court said, no. You're talking of the security of the nation as opposed to the security of the government. If you are afraid that they may be attacked, go and provide them with security. The court also ordered that they be given a house by the government, because the Kaduna State government and the army had burnt and demolished their house. Furthermore, the two of them be paid 50 million naira damages for their illegal detention. The order was not obeyed. We were suddenly told that they had committed murder in prison or where? But what the court has done this time is, Kaduna State government, you have charged them with culpable homicide and all manners of offenses. All right. But for now, they must remain alive to stand trial.
Right.
Therefore, they shall go to India.
So your personal reaction to that ruling is that you're happy that they got this break?
For sure. Because I believe as a human rights person, I'm saving lives, 2 lives.
So for the Islamic movement in Nigeria, this is a step forward, even if it is a faltering step in their fight against...
I think it's still... it's very clear that this provides a window of opportunity to really review the relationship between this organization and the government. Because as I did say, when I was briefed to go to court, and this is very important, to challenge prescription, I did give a condition to my clients. Come, if you want me to go to court, go and suspend further demonstrations. Because I can't be in court fighting against prescription, and you are demonstrating as to appear as if you want to blackmail the court. And in fairness to the organization, the demonstrations were suspended. And so we have filed an action challenging the proscription.
Right.
But for now, let their leader and his wife go for treatment,
yes,
without imposing illegal and provocative conditions.
I want to talk about that prescription in a minute, but I understand that originally the IMN had asked for Sheikh Zakzaky to go to Iran, where IMN apparently has allegiance to and connections with. I mean, why is he going to India rather than Iran for medical treatment?
There was no such application. I filed the application. There was no... The mentioning of Iran by a particular state government was an attempt to blackmail and whip up sentiment against these guys, have nothing to do with Iran. I filed an application that they be allowed to be attended to at Medanta Hospital in New Delhi, India. If anybody has any hospital in Iran, let him show the public.
Well, obviously, we have to reflect both sides of the issue. And, yes. The sense coming from the other side is that they might have decided against Iran in order to reduce suspicion, because many of Sheikh Zakzaky's opponents and critics believe that Iran is backing him and he supports the regime there. So if he goes there, he might not return to face the charge against him.
Again, Charles, to be very honest, there was no reference to Iran in the application in court, either from our side or from the side of the Kaduna State government. So I think it's a red herring. There's nothing like Iran in this whole business,
Right. So where are we now as far as the case against El-Zakzaky is concerned?
The federal government, through the State Security Service, has announced that the couple will be allowed, or the order of the court will be obeyed, i.e., that the couple will be allowed to go for treatment. It is after the treatment, and they will return home. It's very clear. And the treatment and the trip will be supervised by the government.
Right. But there was talk of an appeal against that.
No, that's the Kaduna State government trying to file an appeal.
Right.
I wish the government success. But again, there are areas where the law is very certain and clear. I.e., even if you file an appeal against the release of a citizen, no court shall stay the order. That is the position of the law, as decided in the case of Mowarin and the Nigerian army. It's not like a house. It's not like a shop, You can stay proceeding. It's a judgment on the land. No. When it comes to the liberty of a citizen, and we're talking of the right to life here, no court in Nigeria, as decided by the appellate court, can stay execution of the order of the court.
Do you find yourself as a senior advocate of Nigeria, somebody who's very well respected as a legal eagle, if I might call you that, and somebody who clearly is a human rights activist? Do you find yourself constantly battling against successive Nigerian governments?
For sure.
Including this one?
For sure, not just Nigerian government, unfortunately. It's almost an African phenomenon. I'm involved in the proceedings going on in the Truth, Reconciliation and Reparations Commission in the Gambia. I'm involved in a trial going on in a special military tribunal in Cameroon.
How do you keep across all these cases?
I have an organized system. My colleagues are very efficient and they assist me. I mean, about 50 Africans, 50 West African migrants, 56 of them, were executed illegally by the Yahya Jammeh regime.
Yes, I read about that.
I sent a petition. Last week, 3 young men, soldiers, appeared before the commission and said, we killed, on the instruction of the former president, Yahya Jammeh, who said these were mercenaries. And these are young Africans. 9 of them were Nigerians.
Yes.
Trying to cross, dangerously, through the Mediterranean Sea to Europe. But our system had dehumanized them. A government now killed them. Of course, my petition is being entertained. I also got 2 judgments from the ECOWAS court.
Fascinating.
For a journalist in that country, or 2 journalists. And the government of that country is paying the damages we got from the court.
Okay, stay with us. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our chat with the distinguished senior lawyer and human rights activist Femi Falana. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview, where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things around the world and featuring the voices at the heart of the stories. I'm Charles Anyegolu. Now, as you may know, Nigeria's government has taken the controversial decision to ban the pro-Iranian Shia group, the Islamic Movement in Nigeria, accusing it of unleashing violence and being an enemy of the state. The IMN is challenging the ban, arguing that it is a peaceful movement which has in fact borne the brunt of state-orchestrated violence. These developments have raised fears of Nigeria becoming the latest battleground in the conflict between the world's two main Muslim sects, Shia and Sunni. On Monday, a court in Kaduna in northern Nigeria ruled that the group's founder and leader, Sheikh Ibrahim Zakzaky, who's been in police detention since 2015, should be allowed to travel to India to receive medical treatment. He's been suffering minor strokes and is reported to be losing his sight. Well, the lawyer who represents Sheikh El-Zakzaky is the senior advocate of Nigeria, Femi Falana, who is also one of this country's most respected human rights activists. And Mr. Falana is with me in the studio. Thank you for staying with us. And we were just talking before we went on a break on the conditions that have been set for Sheikh El-Zakzaky to be able to travel for medical treatment. And you're saying that the Kaduna state government has set additional grounds for his travel.
Unfortunately, and this is very unfortunate, we are in a dangerous situation where highly placed government officials and institutions simply disregard court orders and give the impression that they are higher than the court. Once a court has taken a decision, you can't dance around it. You can't set your own condition. Once the court has set a condition, and if you want to review the conditions set by the court, you will approach the same court with an application for variation of the or modification of the orders of court. In this case, the Kaduna state government, which had participated in the case, which had opposed the medical trip, which the court has ordered, now goes to the media. So these are the conditions before we can allow the El-Zakzakys to travel for medical treatment. In the first place, the SSS, State Security Service, is keeping the couple. And they have said we are going to obey the order of the court. A state government that has no locus outside its own state is giving orders to the federal government, is giving orders to the Indian government, even giving orders to me to make an undertaking. The court didn't give those conditions. And with profound respect to the Kaduna state government, those orders are contemptuous. And the law will have nothing to do with them.
So does it look like his trip is stuck in the mud at the moment?
No. Once the federal government has said we are going to comply, I mean, I expect that by now, the federal government and the Indian government will be, having some talks on how the order can be complied with. So, for that reason, no other individual, no other person or institution can impose go and look for traditional rulers as sureties. The court never gave that order.
Right.
Mr. Falana, go and make an undertaking. That order, I can't find it. So,
right.
I'm not bound to comply with the orders of the Kaduna state government.
Okay, let's move on from speaking specifically about Sheikh El-Zakzaky and talk about the controversial decision taken by the Nigerian government to proscribe his group, the Islamic Movement in Nigeria, in effect ban them. What's your reaction to that?
No, the only thing I can say is that you can't ban ideas. I mean, the whole thing reminds me of our undergraduate days. I mean, at the University of Ife now, apart from my own university, we envisaged that the court was, the university authority might ban some of our organizations. I was in the, we had some magazines, news magazines. So we registered 3. So if you ban magazine A, we simply migrated to magazine B. If you ban B, we go to C. I hope we are not getting to that state, because you can't ban ideas. But with respect to the prescription order, we have gone to court. And therefore, it's going to be difficult for me to argue for or against the prescription.
No, I understand that.
But that would be contemptuous.
Right. But the argument of the IMN is that they are a peaceful movement and it is they who've borne the brunt of state-orchestrated violence.
Yes.
Is that an assertion that you agree?
No, there is abundant evidence to back that assertion. I mean, I've been handling their cases for 4 years. I know what I've been told by some of my friends. Oh, this is a lawless organization. They do not subscribe to the Nigerian Constitution. They have no regard for our law. I haven't found that. If they have no regard for the Nigerian Constitution, you won't ask me to go to court. The El-Zakzakys will not have asked me to go to court. Challenge the constitutional validity of our detention. And we got judgment for them. None of them, I mean, not less than 180, I think 270 have been charged with culpable homicide for allegedly killing a soldier, and 180 of them have been discharged and acquitted by the courts. Again, for those who have been charged, including their leaders, they haven't said, Mr. Falana, stop representing us because we do not believe in the Nigerian state. On the contrary, they've got not less than 6 judgments against the government of Nigeria. These judgments have not been obeyed, complied with. They now go to the street peacefully. They've been demonstrating for 2 years in Abuja here, peacefully. And sometimes with children. I mean, the women amongst them. Children are part of the protest when they are not in school. So you can't say these protests have not been peaceful. What you therefore will have expected is not a violent attack on them. They are being on the receiving end. If you mind you, government officials went to a judicial commission for inquiry set up by the Kaduna State government, where they were not allowed to testify, by the way, and to say, we buried the 347 people killed by armed soldiers were given a secret burial in Nigeria. Up to now, no autopsy was conducted, no postmortem was carried out, none of the relations have been formed. Oh, sorry, we lost your loved ones during a violent attack by soldiers. So once you get to it, it can be, for me, if you say, oh, we're dealing with Shiites today, it may be your turn tomorrow.
Right. But could the IMN, in your assessment, I mean, you know them better than a lot of other people. We hear what the government says. We hear what they say. Could they start a rebellion in Nigeria? Could it turn into a Boko Haram-style insurgent group? Because, I mean, its potential to cause havoc is greater than Boko Haram, because unlike Boko Haram, which is confined to the northeast, that's where the organization essentially originated and stayed, I understand the IMN has members in most states in Nigeria.
Yes, I've confirmed that. I mean, they've even staged peaceful protests in Lagos, but for me, the government has a capacity to nip every crisis in the... I mean, and I think we must get to that level, that government must be tolerant, even of defiance, of Bohemians in the country. Because you cannot expel, you can't deport them. So what do you therefore do? How do we engage people? So if some young men are dreaming of some resurgence of the Republic of Biafra, government may want to talk to them. You guys, do you know how many people were lost during the Civil War? Now, how do we talk to them and talk them out of the Pakistanization of Nigeria? If the IMN people are saying, release our leader from detention, and that is why we're on the street, you need to talk to them. For this reason, for that reason, we are not releasing your leader. Can we engage? Can we get an assurance from you that you are going to conduct your affairs within the ambit of the law? You move on. Mr. Omoyele, Sowore, I understand you are planning a protest. Anyway, this is why we have arrested you, so that your revolution will not take place. And once you have done that, you move on. But to arrest them before the action, and after the action, when you have told the whole world we have evidence of treason or terrorism, you now say you went to court. Sorry, sir. Can we keep him for 90 days? And you turn him into a hero. It doesn't go beyond that. Now, people are going to be talking of a political prisoner in Nigeria. It's totally unnecessary. So for me, the government must learn to accept that we are not a conquered people. The government must learn to accept that anybody who has crossed the line, who has violated the law, you must take him to court. And if you have detained somebody illegally and the court has so pronounced and has ordered you to release him, either unconditionally or on bail, you must comply with the court order. That's because, like the late Lord Dennis said, be you so high, the law is higher than you.
Mr. Femi Falana, Senior Advocate of Nigeria and human rights activist, thank you very much indeed.
A pleasure.
Well, that's it for this edition of The Arise Interview. Join us again for a fresh edition tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, bye-bye and thank you for watching.